Alrighty guys, so I'm here with my command log up here, my command prompt up here on the top left and my Sublime on the right. I'm going to go ahead and create a file for our Flask API. Flask a Flask app is really just something that's going to basically host a server on a local domain on your computer, usually your local host name, so 127.0.0.1, and then on a certain port that you can change or specify, but usually it's 5000 by default. We don't really need to mess with that for what we're doing, but you can look up how to change the port if you're already using port 5000. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. In Sublime Text, as soon as you open it, unless you had a project open before, it'll usually just open up a blank document. So I'm going to go ahead and just create a file in my Twilio app folder called touch API or api.py. You run the touch command to create files. Make sure you include the .py in your file name. So I'm going to click on Sublime. I'm going to hit Open File. I'm going to navigate to that new file that I created and open it. Also make sure, oops, just close my command prompt. Well, now I get to show you guys. Make sure that you are in your virtual environment. Otherwise, the packages we installed won't be installed, and then the program won't run correctly. So right now, we're just going to get a really basic Flask app running. I'm going to show you guys how it runs. And then in the next video, we're going to create a test sentiment analysis URL, and then we'll move on to actually creating the text sentiment analysis URL. And then we'll figure out a way how to get Twilio to contact our server. So let's go ahead and start coding. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to import from Flask's base package Flask and request. And then we're also, for future reference, going to import text blob. Import text blob. Oops. Make sure that you capitalize the T and the B in text blob. Okay. We're going to create our app variable. This is how you initialize your Flask server. And you give it a variable name. It's standard to give it app. This variable right here is the name of your file. This underscore underscore name underscore underscore. So Flask is basically saying I'm going to create a Flask app with the name of api.py, and it has some other stuff that it's going to use. Not really important. So to create our first route, so what's going to happen is Flask is going to host a URL on your computer, and you can decide the path to that URL after the base host name. So 127.0.0.1 slash whatever you want after that. This allows us to specify multiple URLs so that we don't have to create a Flask app every time we want a service to talk to our server. So I'll go ahead and show you guys an example. We're going to say @app.route slash basic test. So this basically what this is saying is when a user goes to 127.0.0.1 slash basic test, they're going to hit all of the code that's going to be underneath this block. Okay? And this next variable, methods, is going to define the ways how they can hit that URL. So if you're familiar with networking, you know that there's a post request, a get request, a put, update, delete requests. It's pretty much standard to use get and post. That's all I pretty much use. So for this basic test, we're just going to use get, but you can use post, which we will use later, and it'll allow you to pull parameters out of that request. So now we're going to define a function that's going to be ran whenever this basic underscore test is hit. We're going to call it basic test. Doesn't have to be named the same as the URL that we selected. It can be named anything. I just like to keep it like that so that I understand what the function is hitting. It's just like it's good notation. So right now we're just gonna, the last thing we're gonna say is we're gonna return congrats, you hit our basic test. all this is going to do is when somebody goes to this URL, this function is going to run, and this function is going to return congrats, you hit our basic test, and that's going to be the text that is displayed on the page whenever they go to it in their browser. So now we have to create the function for whenever this program is actually ran, so that Flask will actually start the server. So we're gonna go ahead and set up a basic if structure. This is standard for if you want this file to run and do something specific whenever it's ran manually, like when you specifically hit python.api or python api.py. This is the block of code you want it to run. We're going to hit app debug true because we want to see the log output. If you set it to false, it becomes like a service. You don't see any output, but we want to see it so that we can debug stuff. And then we're going to hit app.run. That's going to start our server. Okay. So now go into your terminal window. Make sure you saved all of this, by the way. Go back into your terminal window and type in python api.py. So now our server, if you get this, it should be running on our our local domain 127.0.0.1 on port 5000. These are basic just things that tell us that our service is up and is active, debugger's active, or debugger pin, etc., etc. Not really important. This, however, is pretty important. I'm going to use Firefox, but open up any browser that you feel comfortable with. Make sure it's on your virtual machine, though. We do not have this URL forwarded beyond our virtual machine. So make sure that your browser's in the virtual machine and type in 127.0.0.1 and then basic_text or whatever you named that URL, and then hit enter. And then, okay, so good thing to remember is you always have to include the port name in a Flask app. Otherwise, it'll reroute you to port 8000, 8080, port 80. Those are your basic internet ports. Since Flask runs on port 5000, which isn't a basic internet port, like a default internet port that this browser will point to, we have to say we want to specifically look at port 5000. Now hit enter. And it looks like we got an error. Oh, I said basic text, not basic test. Okay, so there you go. So now this is the code that we set right here. Congrats, you hit our basic test, displaying on our website. And it's a good thing that I messed up a couple of times because it kind of showed you guys a little bit of debugging that you can do. If you left out the port, it'll say that you were unable to connect to the local host. So if you see that, make sure that you included the port number into your URL. If you misspelled the URL name, the URL path, it's going to say not found. You're going to get this error message. And then you should probably start looking at the spelling of your URL and the spelling in your Flask app. So yeah, guys, so we got our first Flask app up and running. After this, we are going to do a basic sentiment analysis and a post request. So we're going to be installing a Firefox add-on, and then yeah, we're going to do some really cool sentiment analysis. See you guys in the next video.